Hi, I'm Genia Demetriades, and I graduated from Wellesley in 1984. I have been working in the commercial real estate industry ever since, and I'm here today to talk to you about how do you rent an apartment. Renting an apartment is a very important decision to make, and there are a lot of things that you should think about. You should determine your ideal location and your property features. What is most important to you? You also have to think about how much money do you have to spend. It's important to do a budget. You should expect to spend about 30% of your income on rent. And most landlords have a 3 times rent annual income requirement. So if your rent is going to be $2,000 a month, you would need to make $72,000. If you have a roommate, both incomes will be combined. And you can have a guarantor like a parent to help with the rent. Some other things that you should think about is, do you want to live in an urban or suburban environment? Do you want a brand new apartment with lots of amenities or an older property? Do you want things like a pool, a fitness center, on-site maintenance? Do you want to live in a large apartment complex, or would you prefer something that has less than 5 units? Do you want lots of walkability? Is it important to be close to transit? Do you have a car? Do you want a roommate? Will you have a pet? You also now need to think about the impact of COVID. As you know, you can spend a lot more time in your apartment nowadays because of COVID. So things like access to outdoor space and will you have a balcony are things that might be important to you now. When you're doing your apartment search, it's important to do a lot of research. There's a lot of great things that you can look up online, and you can search by neighborhood and location. And there are a lot of different websites that can help you. There's apartments.com, apartmentfinder.com, apartmentguide.com, apartmentlist.com, Rent Cafe, HotPads, Zillow, Trulia, For Rent, and Craigslist. It's important to scout neighborhoods in person as well, and to look at properties at night and on weekends. You want to make sure that you feel very comfortable and you feel safe. You can ask a friend. You can also check apartment ratings on Google, Rent Cafe, apartments.com, or apartmentratings.com. And it's important to look at crime statistics. When I was looking for my first apartment, I visited the local police station and got statistics for what the crimes were in the area. You might also want to consider working with a broker. This is more typical in urban markets like Boston and New York and San Francisco. The fee is typically 1 month's rent, and it can be paid by either the tenant or the landlord. It depends on whether it's considered a landlord or a tenant's market. Right now, we're fortunate enough to be in a tenant's market in places like Boston and in New York and San Francisco. So it's very probable that you could get the landlord to pay for that fee. If you're price conscious, you should consider outer ring or non-central business district city neighborhoods. So in Boston, for example, that would be neighborhoods like Allston and Brighton, Fenway, Jamaica Plain, Dorchester, or South Boston. If you were in DC, you might want to look in neighborhoods like Capitol Hill, Southwest, Noma. And if you were in New York, neighborhoods like Midtown West, Inwood, Washington Heights, Upper East, Bushwick, and Astoria are often more affordable. You could also consider inner suburbs with good transit. In the Boston area, that would be suburbs like Medford, Somerville, Watertown, and Quincy. If you were in DC, it might be neighborhoods like Rockville or Bethesda. You could consider renting in a 2 or 3 family home from a private landlord. Private landlords usually aren't as conscious about raising rents, and so they typically have better rent deals, and they don't have as many rent increases. It's important to know that you can also negotiate free rent, and so nowadays, if it's a new lease up, you can often negotiate up to 2 months of free rent. And in cities like Boston and New York, you can also negotiate free rent in properties that aren't in lease up. It's important to know that you still have to qualify based on the free rent. Another thing to do is to get a roommate and share the costs. Once you find your apartment, you then have to start the application process. What you need to do is you can apply in person and you can often apply online. and you need good credit, so it's important to check your credit. The three major companies allow you to check for free once a year. You should gather up your paperwork. If you're renting from a private landlord, you will often need your two most recent bank statements, two pay stubs, or an offer letter from your potential employer. If you're renting from a professionally managed company like a Gables, Bozzuto, Greystar, they'll require you to fill out an application and then they will run a credit check. The credit check usually includes a criminal check as well. It can take up to 1 day or several days in places like Massachusetts, where the criminal check takes longer. And if you have a guarantor, you will need paperwork from them as well, and they will have to also fill out an application. Also, a guarantor typically is required to show that they have 5 times the income needed to rent the apartment. The money you'll need for the application process includes a security deposit, and in cities like Boston and New York City, that can be up to 1 month of rent. In other cities, it can range from $500 to $1,000. Some landlords allow you to pay a monthly fee in lieu of the entire month amount. And if your credit is good, you can sometimes qualify for a lower deposit. It should be refundable if you don't rent the apartment, so make sure to confirm that. You'll also get charged an application fee. An application fees typically range from $25 to $100 and is usually not refundable. In some states, however, like Massachusetts, application fees are not allowed. So it's important to check so that you don't get charged a fee when the landlord is now not allowed to charge it. But in places like Massachusetts, a landlord can charge a rekeying fee, which can range from $25 to $250, depending upon the system they have at the property. And some cities like Boston and New York City may also require you to give them last month's rent as well. Your lease can be signed in person or online. The lease is usually a standard form created for each state by the local real estate association. It usually has an individual addendum with specifics to that property or landlord, and it always has a list of building rules and regulations. Don't expect to be able to request changes to the lease since they are typically standard. It's important to make sure you read the lease, especially important clauses regarding can you break the lease early and what is the penalty. In some states like Florida, it is a 2-month lease break fee. What happens if you want to swap roommates or a couple breaks up? Do you have to cover the lease costs if they leave? Most leases are signed jointly and severally. What happens if you pay late? What is cause for eviction? And if you have a pet, what breeds are restricted and what are their weight limitations? There are other costs that you should think about when leasing, and these costs depend upon the state that you're in. So for example, with utilities, who is responsible for them? In most states, the tenant pays all utilities, including electricity, gas, water, and sewer. They can be separately metered or charged back in what they call a RUB system. In a RUB system, the utilities are based upon the unit type or size. This is typically used for water and sewer. So for example, the landlord may tell you if you're leasing a studio, it'll be $10 a month, while a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom could be $25 a month. In Massachusetts, the landlord can only charge back the utilities if the tenant is separately metered. So water and sewer, that usually means it has to be sub-metered. Electricity and gas meters are usually in the tenant's name, and the tenant gets the individual bills. You should budget between $200 to $300 a month for all your utilities, depending upon the size of the apartment. Also, if rent includes utilities, that is a good estimate to use when comparing apartments, and some apartments may include all utilities and other apartments may not. Some apartment companies charge amenity fees, and these can be as much as $400. It's usually a one-time charge, and it's not allowed in Massachusetts, but it is common in other states. If you have a pet, there's a variety of fees that can be charged. Usually you can be charged a security deposit, which can range from $100 to $300. Some places also charge a one-time pet fee, which can range from $100 to $400 and does not cover pet damage. The monthly pet fee can range from $25 to $75 a month, depending upon the market, the type of pet, and how many pets you have. In Massachusetts, it's important to note the landlord can only charge a monthly pet fee. No other pet fees or deposits are allowed. Some places also charge trash fees, and these can typically range from $10 to $15. It's sometimes called a valet trash fee. It's not usually charged in Massachusetts, but it's common in other states. If you have a car, you have to think about the parking fees. It's usually charged more often in urban properties, but typically not in suburban unless they also include an enclosed garage. So sometimes you can be charged for a reserved parking space or a second space, and it's typically a monthly fee. Again, the cost depends upon the market. In an urban market, you can pay up to $150 or more a space, while suburban markets with garages typically charge $25 to $75 a space. If you need additional space to store your possessions, you can also get a storage unit. That's always up to you. It's not a requirement. And again, it's typically a monthly charge. The charge depends upon the size of the storage space. It's usually $25 to $75 a month, although if you get a large one, it could be as much as $150 a month. Some other fees that you should think about are some companies are now charging for what they call smart rent. And smart rent is a home automation system for your locks, temperature control, lights. And that charge can range from $25 to $50 a month. Some companies are also installing GigaMonster, which is a company that provides high-speed internet and television. That can range anywhere from $45 to $75 a month, depending upon the company and the service. Most properties now have package systems, which they charge you to use the on-site package system for packages coming from Amazon, FedEx, UPS, and the charge is typically $2 to $5 a month. Some other things you should think about is how long a lease term do you want? A typical lease is for 12 months, but you can often negotiate a short-term lease for 6 to 9 months, but it typically costs more. And if you're planning to be in an area for a long time, you may want to negotiate an 18 or 2-year lease and try and negotiate a lower rent for that. Some communities also require you to use either a satellite provider or one cable provider. So you may not get to choose between Verizon, AT&T, and Comcast. It will be whatever one that they have on site. Another thing you need to think about is renter's insurance. It's very critical to have it. The typical cost is around $200 to $250 a year, and most landlords require you to have it. Some landlords offer renter insurance and will charge you a monthly fee of, say, $25 a month for that. Also, if you do have car insurance, you should check because you can often get a policy with the same company for a better price than buying a separate policy. Well, I hope you found that helpful, and I hope next time we can do this in person so that I can answer questions as well. Thanks, and good luck in finding an apartment.